to YouTube. Bronzeman has gone to poll and it has failed. They got 64% yes votes. You need 70% to pass, so Bronzeman has not passed. So in response to that, Jagex has put up a new survey that you can go give feedback on, basically asking like, if you voted no, why, and what can we do better next time? So we'll take a peek at this. If you missed the last video, I personally didn't get on board with Bronzeman. I didn't think it was fleshed out enough, and basically just a lot of the stuff that wasn't outlined in the blog post. I was concerned about a lot of more small details with how the game mode would work. We'll take a peek at this post and then kind of go over, I've kind of looked around at different like social media just to see what people were thinking about Bronzeman, kind of go over what caused it to fail and what Jagex should do, maybe not even just with Bronzeman, but with game modes in the future. So we'll take a look at all that. Okay, so they say, here's what we're thinking. There's a lot of different conversation about Bronzeman flying around, some of which we feel are addressable, but ultimately, even with a majority of players voting yes, the poll still fell short of the required 70% super majority. By not a really small margin, but like 6% off 70% is that's a pretty far way. It's like, yes, technically a majority voted yes, but definitely a lot of people had issues with this. Should be no secret that we're able to see poll results before they become public by knowing the poll would end with a majority, but not super majority. We've been discussing what happens next and preparing. When a poll fails, we feel it's important we do our due diligence to fully understand why. Basically, they're putting up a survey, and we can take a peek at what the survey looks like. Effectively, they're just asking, hey, did you vote yes or no on that last poll? If you voted no, what caused you to vote no? And there's like a ton of different reasons that they've offered that you can provide back in your feedback. Before we talk about anything else, I have seen so much salt from the people that voted yes and are not getting their game mode. They are incredibly upset about it. I've seen people say that it was me who caused it to fail. Gnomonkey ruined the game mode for me. I've seen a lot of people say like, oh, it's just selfish people voting no, like people who weren't going to interact with this whatsoever, like they're just voting no because it doesn't affect them, etc., etc., etc. People are allowed to vote on things for whatever reason they want, and I did not campaign to get rid of Bronzeman. I was kind of on the fence with it. I'm like, if it passes, you know, it's not the end of the world, but I personally have a lot of reservations about it. So to blame me for everything, I think is a little silly, a little bit goofy. I think pretty much any time people don't get what they want, they just immediately jump to it's spite voters, it's this. People had a lot of problems with Bronzeman and they voted no for those reasons. And we're going to go over why it failed exactly and how they could have laid this out better so that it would have been a game mode that people would have voted yes on, and just how they should be polling stuff like this in the future, which are major additions to the game. Like, game modes are a big deal to be adding to the game. If Jagex addressed everything that I'm about to talk about, I very easily could have been swung to a yes vote. Like I said, I was on the fence. Like, I just was like, there's not really enough going on. I'm voting no on this. But if they addressed a bunch of my concerns and were like, hey, this is how we're going to handle this and this and this, very easily could have voted yes on this. A big thing I've seen is that Unbound Bronzeman, which is the PvP variant of Bronzeman, which was the original like purpose of the plugin. It was always supposed to be like PvP focused in the first place. Just bundling the PvP variant with the Iron Man variant. Very brief description, like one paragraph. No indication of how they would deal with the integrity of it, like how they would deal with people being able to just drop items over to their other accounts. If they had like clarified how any of that could have worked better, like it not having high scores, it kind of being a for fun game mode, and maybe some like clarity on how they would address some of these issues, like that could have very easily passed as well. But again, no clarity, no details on how any of that would have worked. Instead of looking for ways to improve it and flesh it out and then shoot a poll off, because clearly there was a lot of people like questioning a lot of things happening with this poll. Instead, they just immediately were like, okay, we're not going to do Unbound Man. We're not going to do Unbound Bronzeman, and we're gonna go ahead polling regular Bronzeman. Just was very poorly handled in general. Why was the regular Bronzeman version worth more? This whole like survey afterthought, like, okay, let's go look at it, see if we can repoll it in the future. Why did Unbound get tossed in the trash, but not this one? Like, it seems very much so unfair to like the PvP community. It doesn't really make sense to me. The vagueness goes on to the Bronzeman pitch as well. Talked about this in the last video, but they mentioned once you've unlocked an item yourself legitimately, you'll be able to buy and sell that item exclusively through the Grand Exchange, with no clarification on what an unlock entails. And apparently JMods had talked about this in a podcast, so I had a lot of comments telling me, well, they mentioned that like if you were to get a potion drop from a clue scroll, that suddenly would be like a really good drop, and that'd be something you're excited about because you don't unlock the item. How is that not something something they mentioned in the blog. Like, what does unlocking an item mean? I shouldn't have to go dig through a podcast to figure out how this new game mode works. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. A lot of other like minor questions were answered on Reddit in like replies, just stuff that you had to like dig around to figure out how the game mode works. It's just crazy to me that like an entirely new game mode gets like two and a quarter paragraphs discussing like how it works and what's going on with it. Like it shouldn't have even been packaged like in a blog with like the dog quest and the crab quest. Like this deserved its own blog with a ton of information on how this could work, and maybe some additional like poll questions asking like, okay, if Bronzeman passes, would you like it to work this way, this way, this way, this way? The fact that all of this was extremely vaguely described and then pulled under a single poll question for both game modes, Unbound Bronzeman and regular Bronzeman, is insane to me. It reeks to me of like Jagex just thinking, okay, well, this is going to pass. Let's just put it out there. Don't really need to flesh it out too much because it's going to pass easily, and then we can go from there and we'll figure out all the details later. That's not how that works. People do still vote no on things. Thank God. Things need to be fleshed out before they get polled. Like the blog should fully describe how everything works and how it is going to work. It also makes me think that this was very rushed just to secure more memberships. Like people are going to make new accounts. Let's just get this thrown up really quickly, make some more cash on the side, then move on. No mention of additional account slots if they're going to add a new game mode. Nothing like that. Absolutely nothing to do with membership. That was actually mentioned in the survey as well, if that was a reason. Like paying additional membership was too much for you to vote yes on this, which is surprised they even added that. Getting back to this unlocked an item idea, I want to talk about that. A lot of people had different desires for the game mode. So I've seen a ton of people like, okay, I want to play Bronzeman just for no supply upkeep whatsoever, so I can just play an Iron Man but not have to worry about supplies. The thing is, this game mode does more than just that. So it skips entire skilling grinds. As soon as you get a super combat drop, let's say you go do some sailing, kill the Mad Angel once, you get a super combat drop, you now don't need the Herblord to make super combats. You can just buy them, okay? So it skips a lot of skilling grinds. Also, it skips a lot of PVM grinds, which is kind of a bigger problem, I would say, because I think a lot more people would be on board with skipping the skilling grinds, but less so for skipping the PVM grinds, because that's kind of why they're playing an Iron Man in the first place, is to do PVM and have a reason to do things that you wouldn't do on a main. Any item that came in a shard format or a craftable format was something that you got to skip the grind on. Armor seeds. As soon as you got one armor seed, you could buy all 6 armor seeds and just make your full armor. And that extends to the enhanced. As soon as you get your enhanced, yes, you still have to get that to get your Bofa, but as soon as you get that, you can also go buy a Sail Door. So you've just massively cut down that grind, which might be a benefit to some people, but to others, not really. Tormented Demons, they drop a Synapse. As soon as you get one Synapse, you now have all of Tormented Demon weapons. Same with the Burning Claw. As soon as you get the one Claw drop, you can just go buy another one. You have both Claws. So you can create Burning Claws immediately with one drop. Venator Shards. As soon as you get a Shard drop, you can go buy the other 4 Venator Shards, make your Venator Bow. As soon as you get a single Oathplate Shard drop, from any source, you can immediately buy full Oathplate. And then lastly, Zenites. One Zenite, you can buy all 4 Zenites. So there's tons of items in the game that you immediately get to skip by playing Bronzeman. And to some people, that might be enjoyable for them, and to others, that could be a deal breaker. So how does Jagex not even address that whatsoever in the blog or with an additional question? They very easily could have added a blacklist for trading for things like armor seeds, enhanced weapon seeds, synapses, like all of these items that people don't want to skip the grind on necessarily. That could have been a poll option. Like, if Bronzeman passes, would you like us to create a blacklist for these items or not? Like that kind of thing. And I said that, you know, a lot of people would have been okay skipping skilling grinds. Other people would not. Other people want to earn their resources. They want to earn the ability to make potions. They want to earn the ability to craft items. So that's probably a smaller minority, but that still is an amount of people that might vote no because the game mode doesn't work the way they want it to. So how is none of this addressed is crazy to me. Jagex kept calling it like Iron Man Light or Diet Iron. A lot of people wanted main with some very minor restrictions. So like this is an easier variant of a game mode, which is not something they've really done in the past ever. So it really needs to be laid out if you're going to add that, exactly what that looks like. Like where is it between the two game modes? Is it Iron Man but no consumable upkeep? Or is it like a much easier variant of Iron Man that gets to skip all of the horrible grinds and is effectively just a main with a few restrictions? Without a clear identity on exactly what the game mode was going to be, it made it really easy for someone to be like, well, there's this thing about the game mode that I don't like that is not something I would want to play, and that's going to cause me to vote no. So without a clear, like, this is exactly what it is, and this is what it will be, that vagueness opened a lot of room for people to vote no. Another big problem for people with Bronzeman was the integrity of it. And I'm not just talking about the high scores. I feel like that's less big of an issue. High scores is kind of similar to just like the icon next to your name, where it's like the integrity of the game mode, like the prestige you feel when you do stuff like getting on the high scores for different things. How would that work if you're able to get around the restrictions of the game mode and abuse systems in the game to cheese stuff? I personally don't care at all about the prestige of a game mode. I play hardcore all the time, and my wife grinds items for me on the side that I don't want to go get. All of the boring stuff that I don't want to stream. So I'm clearly not a person that cares about the prestige of game modes. But a lot of people do. A lot of people wanted to play Bronzeman for the prestige of playing an Iron Man, but without the upkeep, the consumable upkeep. And that leads back into what I was saying with skipping major grinds. Like these people that care about the prestige of the game mode, if you now get to skip a bunch of item grinds that they would have been willing to grind for the prestige of having gotten it themselves, like now that's a big reason they might be voting no. There was also the concern of being able to sell items on your Bronzeman that have an extremely low volume and then buying them from a main for a super high value. So let's say you go grind an Adamant Dagger Poison Plus. You have an item that like no one ever sells, no one cares about. You go sell that. No one on the GE is selling that currently, except for you. Now you just hop on your main and buy it for 100 mil. Sweet. Now your Bronzeman has effectively just been traded 100 mil. Like no clarification on how that would work. Would there be a way to prevent that from happening? Someone very easily could have voted no just because of that integrity issue being like, you have effectively unlimited GP on Bronzeman. You very easily can do that. That kills the prestige for me, right? Not saying, again, not something I care about a ton, but I could see people caring about this quite a bit, enough to the point where they voted no. There was also no mention of how bonds work. Can you just give this account a bond and then go sell it on the GE and you just transfer wealth that way? Like absolutely no mention of how this would work. And I've seen tons of confusion about it. Like, can you just give that account bonds to give it GP? Like, can you just pump GP into this account? Like that kills the prestige for a lot of people. They mention in the blog initially, you'll be able to buy and sell that item exclusively through the Grand Exchange. I saw a lot of sentiment with people asking if the account could be restricted to only buying items. So absolutely no way to generate GP through the GE, no way to sell items, only the ability to buy things like consumables that you don't want to upkeep. That would have completely solved the issue, the first issue of selling low volume items. Like that would not be possible anymore because you literally can't sell the items. And that would also solve the bond problem. Like you can't sell bonds either. You can't sell anything. You can only buy items. So that would have completely solved this, but absolutely no mention of that whatsoever, no clarification at all on how that would work. It makes me question why they think it's okay to just, throw up a survey after Bronzeman failed. Why was this not surveyed first? Why was this not surveyed before Bronzeman to figure out exactly how it would work, exactly how people wanted it to work, how the majority desired Bronzeman to work, and then lay out exactly how that would work, and then poll, do you want that, yes or no? Very, very easily could have surveyed this first, but again, just reeks of, we don't care, let's throw this up and just get the poll going. A big thing that we're talking about with Bronzeman is, well, aside from a few additions, it's essentially ready to go. Basically, like, this is a low dev time addition to the game. It won't take any dev time. I've seen a lot of people argue, like, why wouldn't they add this? Like, it doesn't affect you in any way. And that's not true. That is just blatantly not true. In the future, Bronzeman absolutely has to be a balancing thought on every single new update that they add. When you add a boss that drops an item, all of those items have to be considered for Bronzeman because they're all unlocks. Mad Angel dropping super combats is something that would have sparked a ton of discussion if Bronzeman was in the game. Like, that would have been like, oh, you can get super combats super early on an account now. Like, that would have been a big problem. Also, skilling updates. Like, imagine if you could buy potion packs from Mixology without the requirement. Maybe that's a thing they add in the future. Like, they remove the herb requirement off Mixology buying packs. Now you can buy a potion pack and get an anti-venom and skip the herb requirement on things like that. There's also the concern of ever adding a boss that has dry protection, like things like the Oath Plate Shard system. Because now, if you add that, well, Bronzemen get to just skip that entire grind. So they have to be considered on every single new system. Maybe we don't do systems like that because it affects Bronzeman. It's easier to just do normal drops, but maybe people like that dry protection system of Oath Plate Shards. So now we have to find a solve that works for both Bronzeman and regular accounts. There is no universe where Bronzeman is a zero dev cost addition to the game. It's too big. It's too big. Too many people would be playing it for it to be zero consideration whatsoever of dev time. That's just not true. That's absolutely just not true. An option would be don't have any high scores for Bronzeman. It's kind of just purely a for fun game mode. They are just mains on the high scores. Then, like, you can be like, okay, with that in mind, we're not going to give them any consideration whatsoever in the future, and they genuinely will cost 0 dev time because it's a for fun game mode. But the fact that it has some prestige, it has a high scores, and people are going to care about this kind of thing, and now you have to justify every single update to Bronzeman as well. It's the same as UIM. You see UIM come up with a lot of updates, like with the cargo, with sailing. Like, how will cargo work with UIM? There are things that have to be considered for every account type. How hardcore Ironman work with sailing was a big concern as well. Like, if your sail sinks, will you lose your hardcore or not? Like, these things don't cost 0 dev time. I think it's also just silly to assume that it's kind of like going into surgery. Like, when you go into surgery, there's a % chance that it goes wrong and something gets botched, right? Every update they do has a chance of being botched, like adding a twisted bow spawn. It doesn't even have to be that major. The idea that this update would come out flawlessly with no bugs whatsoever, I think is unlikely as well. So that's always a concern when you're adding stuff as well. The like, this doesn't concern you whatsoever, why would you vote no, is a really, really weak argument, I feel. Like, it's not accurate, because every single update affects you in some way. I wanted to talk about the survey in-game, because they mentioned a pretty giant question here, which was, how much did each of the following contribute to your no vote? I wanted to go over the reasons that Jagex provided for us to give feedback on. They've got old school doesn't need any new additional game modes. I would be okay with game modes in the future for sure. There are definitely a lot of game modes I'd be interested in, but definitely a sentiment I saw quite a bit. The plugin already exists, so there doesn't need to be an official mode. Also a sentiment I saw a lot. I think this response from people comes from the place of people that feel like the game mode is a slightly harder main. So to those people, it's like, okay, it's barely any different from the main game. Like, why not just use a plugin if you want to play it? Because it's so similar to everything else. I think that's where they're coming from. Devalues the achievement of existing Iron Man modes. I think that was a kind of weaker one, but I definitely saw people saying that. Concerns about its impact on the Grand Exchange economy. This was something I didn't really hit on either, but these new accounts that they're spinning up will be selling items as well. So you're getting a bunch of accounts that are going to be selling items. It definitely would affect the economy. Definitely a valid concern for sure. Key design points weren't clear enough before the poll. For me, this is maybe the biggest thing. Like, this needed to be fleshed out. Like, I didn't understand how the game mode exactly was going to work, and that needed to be very clear. The poll came too soon after the design was announced. I don't know about that. I think it's okay to poll as soon as the details are there, but I rather development time went to other content. Very valid. Very valid. If this is an update that you feel like is basically the same as Iron Man or main, like it's very, very similar to those two game modes, and you're like, I'd rather they just spend dev time other places, like pretty valid. I wanted a different game mode instead, so basically I spite voted. The design needed significant changes. It definitely did. 100% did. It doesn't affect me, so I saw no reason to support it. This is a common way I see a lot of people vote. I'm curious how many people give this one a 5. For me, just because I don't interact with an update does not mean I'm not going to vote yes on it. But if I think it's not a good addition to the game, that's what causes me to vote no on something. If it's something that is going to affect the game negatively and not positively, then I would end up voting no for it. But just voting no just because you're not going to interact with it, I think is a little short-sighted. I mentioned membership costs for new characters are prohibitive. Very, very true. You get 1 character per membership. Very, very expensive to spin up new account types. I voted no because Unbound was removed from the poll, so I spite voted. I voted no because I thought Unbound was part of the poll. Here's how many people had confusion on that as well, because they did, after the fact, remove Unbound, and a lot of people aren't going back and looking at that kind of thing. So, like, generally, I was confused about the poll. I think what Jagex is going to find with this survey is that there's not, like, one clear major thing that went wrong with Bronzeman, and it's a, like, gray mix of a ton of this stuff for everybody. Well, one thing might not be a 5 vote for one person. A lot of this could be 5s for a different person. So I don't think they're going to get a clear, like, oh, we just need to tweak this and then we can pull Bronzeman. I think a lot of this is going to be different for a lot of different people because it's a game mode between 2 game modes, and the idea of what people want it to be is different for everybody. So this is a very, very difficult thing to add to the game for that reason. And the fact they gave it so little consideration, like so little detail, so little establishment of all of the details exactly how this is going to work is crazy to me. There's a ton of questions asking for like clarity on exactly how people want the game mode to work. This one's interesting to me. They ask, how should PvP work for Bronzeman? And one of the answers is there should be an unranked version of Bronzeman with no high scores where people are able to acquire items through PvP. I think that should take your vote. If you were one of the people that said, I would have loved Bronzeman. It doesn't affect you in any way. Why would you vote no? And you don't vote on this question in this way, you are being hypocritical. Because again, absolutely no high scores unranked for PvP purely for fun. I don't see any reason that can't be added to the game. It literally does not need to be consideration after it gets added, and it's purely for fun for PvP players. If you made that as an argument, like this doesn't affect you, then that's how you should be voting in the survey. So that's the general vibe of the survey. Now, the survey really gives the vibe of Jagex wants to try again. Go back to the drawing board, clean up Bronzeman, and try and pull it again. It's failed the poll. I've seen a lot of people say they should never re-pull anything once it's failed. I don't think that. I don't think that in this case. I think that Bronzeman deserves a fair shot because they screwed up. They decided to package Bronzeman with the dog update and give it two paragraphs of discussion packaged with two very, very different game modes, one PvP based, one non-PvP based, with no clarity on how things worked, and immediately jump into a poll with a single poll question. That is what Jagex decided to do. Very unfair to the people that genuinely wanted this game mode. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I really think the same with Unbound. I think they should go back and re-pull Unbound with clarity in a way that makes sense, probably without high scores, and pull that as well. I do think they should go back and do that. My question is, when can Jagex stop screwing up polls and we can just make things very clear and concise in blogs without requiring us go dig through Discord, without requiring us go dig through Reddit, Twitter for answers to questions about how things work, and instead all of the details are very clearly listed and laid out in the blog? And when can we get polls that aren't just a single question like, do you want this added as it's described in the blog? When a bunch of details aren't described even in the blog and are outside of the blog. There should be polls on giant additions to the game like Bronzeman with a lot of questions, maybe like 8 questions. The fact that Bronzeman had a single question, yes or no, do you want it, when the dog quest had like 4 questions is just ludicrous. It's actually hilarious to me that they decided to do that when Bronzeman should have been the only thing in its own blog. That should have been the whole discussion, and it's just totally an afterthought, which is really unfair to the people that wanted this. It's the same way I feel about future updates. When they are trying to add game modes in the future, they should be very, very clearly laid out exactly how they're going to work, and then they should be given a fair shot in a poll with multiple poll questions asking how they work. With that said, I think it's only fair, since I voted no, to clarify what I think would have made Bronzeman a yes vote for me. A lot of people fall somewhere in between the 2 game modes. Do they want it to be Iron Man without upkeep, or do they want it to be a main with some restrictions? For me, I would have voted yes if it was more the first one. If it's more Iron Man, but you don't upkeep supplies. So that would mean no selling items on the GE, only able to buy items. Considerations for drops that have alleviate dry protection, things like Oathplate shards or synapses, like certain items that allow you to obtain everything a grind has to offer immediately, should be blacklisted, like items that you can't go and buy. So that would have to be a consideration. That would require dev time in the future, but at least it would make sense for the game mode. And I also wouldn't be skipping scaling grinds. Like, I wouldn't make it so as soon as you get a potion, you can just instantly buy that. I think once you have the level to make something, then that should also be a requirement to unlock it as an item you can buy. If you have the level to make anti-venom and then you can go buy as much as you want, I think that's totally fine. At that point, like, Bronzeman has a clear identity. It is an Iron Man, just without supply upkeep. So that means you're never gonna have to worry about, like, collecting more scales from Zulrah. You're never gonna have to worry about collecting more darts for your blowpipe. Never gonna have to worry about running out of dragon arrows. You always can upkeep those as long as you have GP from grinds. That is the idea behind Bronzeman. Would have made a lot more sense and had like a clear identity versus this like wishy-washy, it's just like easier Iron Man, but also no upkeep. Like, I think if it has a clear identity and is like close to Iron Man, but purely no upkeep, for me, that would have made it valid as a game mode for me, and I would have voted yes. I think game modes that are less clearly defined and more like in between, you control your own fate, play in the way that you want to play with some restriction, works a lot better to just keep it as a plugin. Turning that into an official game mode is going to make it really hard to balance in the future and just make it really confusing for everybody. Keeping it to a very clear identity of it's still Iron Man, but you don't have to upkeep supplies, just keeps things simpler and easier for everyone involved and makes it a valid game mode. Once you get to endgame, you don't have to worry about, like, basically be able to play a main at that point, which is what an endgame Iron really looks like. You'd be able to play a main without the upkeep, be able to do things like speedrunning, pet hunting, whatever you want to do at that point, which is when your Iron Man kind of leaves the field of a normal Iron Man. So it makes a lot more sense to me to want to play that type of game mode. And I know a lot of people are going to throw in my face, well, since you want hardcore main, why don't you just go play that with a plugin right now? You can absolutely do that. My idea for hardcore main would be on completely separate servers with a separate economy. That does not work with a plugin. Like, what I'm after has a completely different identity than hardcore iron. And you can't replicate that with a main by just adding like a hardcore badge next to your account name. It doesn't work as a plugin. Hardcore main has a lot of issues by putting it in the default world. Like, it's going to affect the economy just like Bronzeman. And also, it's just not really that different from regular hardcore Iron Man. Like, it's not interesting enough to be worth adding a new account type either, like in the same way that Bronzeman is. But if it was in a separate server, I'd be very interested in seeing how that works out. I would love to see them do something like the way they did Gridmaster, like do a temporary hardcore server, maybe boosted rates, boosted drop rates, XP rates, and then just see how that works out. That's totally different than like a permanent like main game mode versus like a for fun different server type thing. And these different hardcore servers, if they were ever to happen, would have a ton of issues that they would need to iron out and find solves for, just like Bronzeman has, like concerns about muling, concerns about bots, swapping. So it's, again, like all of these like new additions to the game, they need a lot of consideration and they need to be carefully fleshed out and thought through whenever you're going to add something like this. Let's flip this around and say this is hardcore servers. We have a red helmet here. If they packaged hardcore servers with the dog quest as an afterthought, gave it 2 paragraphs of description, and then polled, do you want this, yes or no? I would vote no a million times. Like, you cannot be adding new game modes in any capacity with little to no, like, forethought. Like, that does not work. These are big additions to the game that need to be thought through. Anyways, that's my justification for hating Christmas and puppies and Santa Claus and cookies. So go ahead and leave down in the comments below if I ruined your day. I really do wish I had the influence that people pretend that I have. I truly could control anything that I want and get anything that I want changed or added to the game. Leave a like if you liked it and or subscribe. Bye.